Listening to movies at reference level. Should you do it? Should you not do it? Now, first of all, this is going to come down to your hearing, right? A lot of people want to push their receivers to, reference. They want to see what their speakers can do, what they're capable of, what dynamics can they get out of their speakers. Also, they want to see whether or not they're going to have any distortions. And some people want to run things to reference, right? For various reasons. Room size matters, right? So if you're in a big theater, if you are one of these fortunate people that have a huge space and you've, let's just say your seating area is kind of a little bit further back away from the screen or wherever you have your center channel, then, running at reference may not be as loud as running it at reference in a living room. You know what I mean? So a lot of people think reference level, they think, we're sitting in a living room space or something like that, and we're just running it at reference. It's a couple things you got to take into consideration with that. One is room size. Another thing, right? Your hearing. Some people run these systems at reference, and because some people have bad hearing, right? They have to really crank it up to be able to enjoy a lot of dynamics and a lot within the movie. So they may crank it up to reference level because of that. Some people, they just want to hear what their system can do. They want to stress test their system and give the system a workout, right? They feel like I paid X, Y, and Z for my system. I want to hear what it can do. You know what I mean? If I really pushed it. Now, reference level, is that something that I would personally push my system to? I've done it before, right? Do I enjoy it? No, right? I don't enjoy it. And the reason why I don't enjoy it, because I do not enjoy the stress on my ears, right? Now, there are some movies that just sound so good, you just keep cranking it up and cranking it up and cranking it up, and you do push those boundaries. And sometimes you may hit reference, right? But, I might do it for a short period of time and then, get off of the, turn the volume down. Right? Because, ultimately you want to be able to hear correctly, like your sound system for a number of years, right? You don't want to just enjoy your sound system for months, then your hearing's out, and then that's it with your hi-fi career or your hi-fi, enjoyment or your home theater enjoyment. You don't want to do that, right? So you always want to, maybe if friends come over or something, you want to crank it up just to show them what it can do with their tolerance level. Fine, right? But overall, no, I wouldn't do it. So I've got an Anthem AVM 90 and an Anthem MRX 1140. I like to run it at -24, right? That's like my normal range. If I want to crank it up, I might run it to -18, right? That's like if I'm really like enjoying something, I really want to crank it. If I want to get crazy, then I'll go -15, right? The room that I'm in, it's a living room, right? And I'm probably about, let's say 9 feet away, 8 to 9 feet away from my center channel. So I don't want to get too crazy with the volume, right? But sometimes I do, right? In my personal theater, I'm a little bit closer to the center channel. So, even though the speaker system, like the calibration system has dialed back the speakers a lot, if I'm closer to them, it's not as bad as if I was cranking at the same level, in the house. You know what I mean? So it kind of just like, it mitigates that a little bit, but still in my personal theater, -18 is more than enough, right? That's like, it feels like to me, -15 in the house, right? But everybody has their tolerance. Would I recommend it? I would not recommend reference level for anybody. This is just something, it's like a benchmark that some people use to, rate whether or not things are going to distort, and see if your speakers can really handle being that loud, and if, try it every once in a while, but I would not ever recommend you doing that for a whole movie. And I do hear people say that a lot of times, like, oh, I was listening to this movie at reference, and I'm thinking, like, what's up with your hearing? And one thing you do see or hear when you go to these conventions, a lot of people say their hearing is not the same. A lot of home theater enthusiasts, because they're used to cranking, either they're, it's age related, you know, because after a certain age, your hearing is not as good, right? Like your body, you know, when you're younger, you have to be able to hear everything because you're more susceptible to, you know, the dangers of the world and stuff like that. So your hearing is more heightened. Like you can hear crickets from across the street when you're younger. I remember being able to hear that, right? Now it's like it's not so much the same, right? You're getting older. But, you know, it could be age related, or it could be people just like cranking their systems up too loud on a regular basis can cause hearing issues. And I want to be able to hear as much as I can for a long duration of time. So reference level can be fun, right? But I don't think it's a necessity. Just because your system can do it does not mean you can do it, that you should do it. You know, some people I've heard them crank it to -10. I would never do that unless I'm watching a stream. Now, if you're watching a stream, it's not going to be as potent audio as like a 4K UHD disc or like a Kaleidoscape, you know, so, you know, you might have to crank it up 5 to 10 dB more than you would like a 4K or a Kaleidoscape movie. Right. So in that case, you know, I have gone to -10 before watching a Disney movie. You know what I mean? Or HBO, I'm sorry, a Max, I think they call it Max now, a Max movie when they had like the, you know, low audio, you know, but other than that, if I'm watching a 4K UHD, unless the movie is mixed very low, like, you know, I wouldn't do it. You know, I think Mad Max Furiosa, right, is one of the movies it's not really mixed like extremely low, but you do have to crank it up a bit. It's not mixed the same as Mad Max Fury Road, right? It's a little bit lower, so you got to crank it up a little bit, you know. So movies like that, you know, I might be at -18, you know, something like that listening to it. But other than that, I try to stay away from reference if I can. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me, my personal opinion. When you go to these conventions, they're going to run reference a lot of times. You know, a lot of these movie theaters and stuff like that, they're going to try to run reference. And that's partly why I don't go to my local Dolby theater, because it's too loud, right? And it's like, it's not a good loud because, you know, a commercial theater just using, you know, like the cheapest stuff that they can get away with, right? So it's loud, but it doesn't sound that great. It's just, you're just killing your ears. So I try to stay away from Dolby theaters if I can, unless it's a really good Dolby theater and they're using really good speakers, you know, and I've only heard a couple of them that really sound good, you know. So it's my opinion. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section below. When I had my Denon hooked up, I got a Denon 3800H and I had a Marantz Cinema 50. Those I tried to run the reference before, but I got a lot of distortion. You know what I mean? It didn't really sound that good. The Marantz, I didn't get as much distortion, but it didn't sound that great, you know, so I didn't even want to really kick it up there. The Anthem sounds really good. You know, the higher you get in volume, it's like really smooth sounding. It's smooth and it's warm sounding a little bit, you know, so it's a little easier on your ears. I know Marantz is warm sounding, but when you crank it, it's just... maybe a separate Marantz would be better, but a Cinema 50's got an amp built into it and all of that. It just didn't, it sounded distorted, you know. So, but I try to stay, like I said, if I don't have to run reference, if I'm not just demoing something, and even when I let people hear like demos, they don't really want reference. You know, you crank it to -18, they're cool with that because they're not just taken back by just the big sound. Right? They can kind of take in everything, you know, directionality and everything, you know, at -18, you know, versus -15, you know. So I don't know. Y'all tell me what y'all think down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel. Your boy is here. You know what I'm saying? Ask me anything. I will respond. I'm out, y'all. Peace.